We're recording. Welcome, welcome to Weekday Somatics. Let's begin today with just a few moments of just. You may find this easy, you may find this challenging. We'll do it anyway. Let's explore the possibility just for a moment. Settle in. Don't anticipate. Just rest. And for just 1 minute, approximately, let's explore this possibility of receiving grace. And let all of your ideas of what that means, again, all the anticipation, see how so much of life has become about anticipation of something, anticipation of what it might be. But I'm proposing just for 1 minute, let's receive the reality, the present reality of grace as it is. Now, of course, if you wish, you're welcome to continue that indefinitely. That would be, that's maybe the most advanced practice there is. So feel free to just continue that forever if you wish. Explore if there's any reason why that needs to be interrupted. Why is there anything that needs to interrupt that? Is there anything that actually can interrupt that? And that could be, sincerely, that could be a lifelong inquiry, and as it's the most advanced. So if you're tuned into that, you can disregard everything else that I might say. And for the rest of us, let's find a posture that we can rest in deeply for the next 30 minutes. So the challenge, the opportunity, the blessing that is offered in this moment is this such a fine line. It doesn't even exist. And we're exploring that of deep, profound rest that's beyond comfort. It's so far beyond comfort because it's the possibility of anything that could interfere is dismissed entirely. There's just complete rest, complete surrender. So this means that there's an alertness, there's an awareness. We're not collapsing into a stupor of unconsciousness. It's not the same as sleep, but you may find sometimes that you think, I'm not sure, maybe I fell asleep. That's fine, that's good, that's wonderful. There's no problem there. But just be aware that there's a difference between sleep and what we're doing here. What we're doing here is actually discovering wakefulness. This is a wakefulness that transcends our normal sleep so that we can actually be awake while asleep, awake while awake. And you'll start to really get clear on this and see how what you have called awake and what you have called asleep were all just a dream. It was a dream that you are awake to, and you are discovering that wakefulness with increasing clarity. At first, you think, I'm not sure, I think I might have been asleep. But you start to recognize that this rest is so profound. It goes all the way to the very foundation, so that all of the struggle and strain is wiped clean. And in order to do that, we have to be present, we have to be awake. So we're setting ourselves up to be awake, to be present, to be restfully alert, so that we're not collapsing. And by collapsing, hopefully you understand what I'm pointing to there. Just look at your experience. Look at how it is that you go through the day habitually, not consciously, but the habit, the habitual way of going through your day, which is to say the unconscious way of going through the day. And you'll see it's you go from one collapse to another. Just see how that is. You struggle and strain to heave yourself to the next position, and then you collapse. That's the habitual way. There's a violence involved, flinging. You are straining and working hard. And then observe that there's this other way in which you surrender all of the effort, you surrender all of the strain, you surrender all of the ideas of yourself, what it means to be right and good and correct and all of that. And you find yourself truly awake, present. So this is our foundation. This is the beginning. A lot of the times, a lot of practices put this as the goal. You're going to do all of these other things indirectly to get to this. I proposed we just begin here. Why the indirectness? Let's just be very direct. Let's just start from the destination, which is here. Let's surrender to this, and then our practice is to discover from this stillness, from this clarity, from this ease, from this grace, to discover effortlessly, just by being witness, just by being still, just by surrendering. We discover every habit that has seemed to be a problem. We start to wake up to the drama, the useless drama, the painful drama of our lives that we've attached to. We thought we had to solve that in order to be okay. But what we really, truly can discover very rapidly, I want you to understand it's very, very rapid that you can discover this. And then it just gets deeper and deeper. We can all discover that we don't need to do that we don't get any joy from that. We don't ever find any fulfillment in that. It does not make the world a better place. We are not happier for it. It does not shine a light of love or grace or beauty into the world. All it does is mess it all up. So we can just get really clear on that. We can just see by being witness to all of the impulses. Just notice what's happening now. Just observe the thoughts as they arise, the sensations, the memories, the impatience, the frustration, the disappointment, the discouragement, all of the judgment, criticism. I'm missing many things there. You can fill in the blanks. Envy, jealousy, discouragement, I might have said that one. Fear, anxiety, worry, sense of lack, not enough for me. Anticipation, it's one that we started with. Well, we can just see how all of these habits that we've identified with, what do I mean by that? We can just see that we thought that we needed to do these things. We thought that these were essential in order for us to be okay. Otherwise, really, we would never have done them. So see the truth in that. See that if you have believed, which you have, because we all have, that you needed to do these things to protect yourself, to get something for yourself, to prove yourself. If you really believed that that was necessary for your okayness, then you were creating conditions. You were identifying as something conditional. You were identifying as something impermanent. And you can see that that's the state of the world. When I get the conditions right, when the world gets the conditions right, then there will be peace. Well, that's conditional peace. Then if the conditions, it's so obvious, right? If the conditions change, which they will, then peace disappears. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? It's true. I don't even need to ask the question. It's true. You can just see that that's true in your experience when you just observe. So what we are discovering here is something unconditional. So we're observing from stillness. Now, at first, it might not seem like it. So I want to clarify that. At first, it might seem overwhelming because there are so many sensations, memories, thoughts, all the conditioning, the compulsive reactivity may be very strong. So that's okay. Don't think that you have to be very advanced, whatever that would mean, by the way, but just don't think that you have to be very advanced in order to have success with this approach, because that would not be true. This is actually, this approach is such an incredible gift. It really is. It's an incredible gift because it's accessible to all of us. It's accessible to me. And I know that I am not advanced. It's very evident. So I know that it's available to everyone. Wherever you are, whatever your experience, whatever your conditioning, no matter how agitated you might perceive yourself to be, this is available to you. Just set yourself up in the best way. So again, let's come back to the basics. Be gentle. Just notice if you're pushing yourself. Notice if you're believing that you'll get better results if you try harder. Notice if you think that some kind of strain indicates that you are working and that working is good, and therefore the strain indicates that you're successful or you're making progress. Notice how you might cling to that. You might be afraid to let that go. You might be afraid to soften, because who would you be? Maybe then you would be a failure. So be willing to be gentle. Be willing to be honest. It's a very organic process. So there's give and take, give and take, give and take. We have to become gentler and more honest, gentler and more honest, gentler and more honest. These are our gentleness and honesty, which is really to say unconditional love, but maybe that's too challenging to understand. So we'll just say gentleness and honesty. Let these be the guides. So am I pushing? Am I straining? Am I indulging fear? Let me be gentle. Let me be held. Let me receive the support. Let me trust. Let me surrender. So surrender is an interesting word. So let's explore that a little bit. So notice what idea you have of surrender. And then I want to propose something that maybe is different than your idea. Maybe it's the same as your idea, in which case that's fine. But maybe it's different than your idea. If it's different than your idea, then be willing to open to this possibility of surrender as receiving grace, receiving unconditional love, being totally supported. Receiving blessings, divine blessings. Just be open to that image, that you are surrounded by divine blessings, divine support, perfect, infallible, pure, unconditional love. That it is, and you don't have to believe this, by the way, just open to this possibility. I'm not asking you to believe it. You can't unless you do. So don't try, but just open to this as a possibility, and you'll start to see that this can become more real for you. Just notice whatever objections you have to that, and just see, use these two guides, gentleness, honesty. So gentleness, am I being overly harsh? Am I hardening? Am I straining? Am I clinging? Am I grasping? Let me be more gentle. Let me hold myself so lightly and tenderly like a newborn baby, so that I'm not digging my nails in, tightening my grip, squeezing, because then the baby cries. So let me be gentle. Let me be gentle yet supportive. So I'm gentle. Now let's use the other guide. Let me be honest. So what does that mean? It just means to look without drawing any conclusions, just to remain open. To remain open to some truth, some insight, some clarity beyond my self-concept, beyond my worldview. And then again, I'll suggest this image. And again, don't force anything. Don't try to believe this, but just be open to this possibility of just seeing this image. Just entertaining this possibility that I am surrounded, you are surrounded, we are surrounded by divine perfection. We are surrounded by support beyond imagination, beyond belief, that is unconditional, that we cannot in any way diminish. There's no possibility of truly rejecting it. There's no possibility of destroying it. There's no possibility of harming it. There's no possibility of becoming unworthy of it. There's no possibility of becoming more worthy of it. It is the pure light of the Divine Mother's unconditional love. And again, don't believe it, but just see if you're arguing with it. And ask yourself this question: if it's true, then does arguing make it untrue? And ask this other question: if it's not true, is arguing necessary? You see, if it's true, it's true. And if it's not true, it's not true. And I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm just proposing this image, and just see what happens. So we're using these guides of gentleness and truthfulness. So only you can do that. I can't do that for you. But just notice, are you straining? Are you striving? Are you protecting? Just see that you can be more gentle. And see that you can continue to be truthful. Truthful just by being observant, without drawing conclusions, just seeing what is, without assuming that you know what it is. Without assuming that you can't know what it is also. See how that's another conclusion. It's a false conclusion. It's a way of artificially cinching something up so that we have this false sense of security. Either I know, or I know that I don't know. And see that there's a third possibility, which is just to remain open, just to remain truthful. There's a relative truth. It's a useful truth on a relative level to acknowledge that I don't know. But beyond that, there's a deeper truth, which is I'm just simply open. I'm not going to draw the conclusion in any way. I don't know that I know or that I don't know. I'm simply just open to the possibility. So there was a comment that I saw in the chat group, which I really appreciated, and I want to explore a little bit, which has to do with the world. And this is connected to the dog barking, by the way. So let's look at this in our direct experience. So I want you to notice, and by the way, this will most likely be easier with eyes closed. So if you can do so without that being distressing. I understand sometimes for some people that can be distressing. And if so, don't force yourself to close the eyes. It's important that you're able to connect to some sense of safety, even if it's very, very small, even if it's just a tiny glimmer. So don't cut yourself off from that by pushing or straining to do something because you think it will be better. That would not be true. But if you're able to close the eyes and still be connected to a sense of okayness, then please explore that now. And what I'd like you to notice is this idea of the world. I want you to notice where that world is. Now, for most of us, the habit suggests the world is out there. Whatever your experience is fine, by the way. So you don't need to artificially project a world out there if that's not your experience. If that's not your experience, that's wonderful, because perhaps you're just perceiving more clearly. So just remain with that clarity of just the direct perception of the truth of the world. But if that's not clear to you, if it's not clear to you that there's a possibility of the world not actually being out there, then let's explore this together. Let's see what is the actual nature of the experience of the world. So the world, let's observe what is the world made of. Now, if you have eyes open, then the world is made of, in part, of images. If you have the eyes closed, however, notice that the idea of the world out there being composed of images is, in fact, only a memory. It's an idea drawn from memory, because the present reality does not include that if you have your eyes closed. The eyes are closed and the present reality does not include the world as images, or certainly if there are images, those images are occurring at a subtler level, at the level of imagination or memory, but they're happening where? Are they happening out there? It's usually more clear, right? That those images are happening what we would call inside. Now, again, if you already perceive that there is no distinction between inside and outside. If you perceive clearly, directly, that that's a false distinction, just stay with that. Stay with that openness. You don't need to do anything further. But if that's not clear, then let's look a little bit more at this experience. So the idea commonly is that the images are perceived through the eyes, interpreted by the brain, but the images are coming from the outside. That's the usual idea. But with the eyes closed, we can't really indulge that idea too seriously because we likely don't really have a sense that the images would be coming from outside if the eyes are closed. So either you perceive no images or you perceive what we would perhaps call inner images. So with eyes closed, perhaps you can start to sense that at the very least, there is no image presently that proves a world out there. Any images that present themselves are images that are what we would call inner images. Now, you might have thoughts that say, yes, but I could open the eyes and then I would see what's out there. That's fine. But just open to this exploration. Just see what's possible. See what you might discover. If you don't argue with it. Again, if something is true, do we need to argue in order for it to be true? If it's true, then its truth stands independently. The truth shines forth independently if it is true. We only have to argue for what's not true. So let's not argue and then let's just discover what's true. So what is the other evidence that we have for the world out there? Sound. So let's observe this phenomenon that we call sound in our direct experience now. So notice that there is some kind of phenomenon that you call sound. Out of habit, you just call that sound and you utilize the habit of projecting a world out there to say the sound is coming from out there and it's sound waves that travel through the air and then reach my ear and then do something through the miracle of nature to translate into what I can interpret as sounds that have some particular meaning and significance. That's all an idea though, isn't it? So let's explore the direct experience. So notice that there is a phenomenon. We don't need to deny that. We don't need to try to blot it out. Remember, we're riding the wave. If we move too far in any direction, we fall off the wave. We're riding the wave. If we allow ourselves to ride the wave, then we have the smoothest experience possible. There's no requirement that we ride the wave. You're welcome not to, but just notice that if you don't, there are a couple of possibilities. One is you could experience a lot of turbulence. That's what most of us experience when we fall off the wave. The other possibility is much more rare, which is that we could surrender completely to our unbounded nature, as metaphorically as the ocean. But this comes back to gentleness and truthfulness. So you tell the truth. Can you truly sustain that? Can you truly sustain remaining as that open awareness? Can you live your life as that open awareness? If so, wonderful. But if not, then maybe you could dismiss any arguments that say, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. And you can just be truthful, which is riding the wave is the smoothest experience for me at the moment. So let me do that. So if we indulge too much argumentativeness, then we fall off the wave. So we can just observe the habit of argumentativeness, and let's just not indulge it, because it becomes too turbulent if we indulge that habit. And again, it's unnecessary because the truth stands clearly. It doesn't require, certainly doesn't require my agreement. Like the sun doesn't require that I agree with it. The sun just shines. It doesn't need me to affirm it or agree with it. It's just, it shines. That's its nature. So the truth shines because that's its nature, because it is real. We don't need to argue with it, and we don't need to try and believe it. We can just observe. So what is this? What is the actual nature of this phenomenon that we call sound? Out of habit, we have a whole story about it, but we can start to observe that story closer and subtler in direct experience, and just notice that that phenomenon that we've projected into an external world out there, where is it actually happening? You know the answer to that. It's obvious. It's happening here. We could say it's inside, not outside. Now, again, if you already recognize that that's a false distinction, fine. Just stay with that. But also be truthful. If you don't recognize fully that that's a false distinction, then don't try to leap ahead and be overeager to have the right answer, because the right answer won't satisfy you. It's only the clear seeing, the clear recognition that will actually help you. So just be patient and stay with the exploration. So see perhaps that this phenomenon that you out of habit projected into the world out there is in fact occurring here. Isn't that true? Can you see that? Just look. If you don't argue, if you don't grasp at memory, idea, things that you've been taught, it's crystal clear. This phenomenon that I have called sound is happening here. It's not happening out there. Now, the brain is if you're really doing this inquiry, the brain is going crazy. It's flip-flopping everywhere. It can't figure this out. It's saying, but wait a second. I know the world is out there. I know that the sounds correspond to things that I see out there, and therefore it must be out there. And it has a location out there, and I have a location here. So let's explore. Just tune into this phenomenon of sound, what you call sound, and notice that out of habit, you project it out there, you give it a location. You give it a location at a distance from you. But observe in direct experience where it is actually happening. Is it happening at a distance to you? If you don't believe the thought, if you don't grasp the thought, if you don't indulge the habit, if you remain totally restful yet alert, don't grip in it in the abdomen. Don't grip with the jaw. Don't squeeze the forehead. Don't push the tongue. Just remain restful. It's okay if you want to smile a little bit, though. It's a little funny. Remain restfully alert and just notice where is this actually happening? Is it actually happening in a distance? Can you find that distance? Again, the brain's going to go crazy. It can't make sense of this. It's trying. Just let it do its thing. Don't be concerned. Don't try and calm it down. That's the habit, isn't it? The habit is try and calm down, don't get overexcited. You know what happens when you get overexcited? You get stressed, and then it's a big problem. But see, it's not actually true. You're witness to this right now. If you're really present, you're seeing that none of that is true. All that's actually true is when you indulge the habit of trying to get it under control, trying to figure it out, trying to protect yourself, trying to navigate this world out there, that you become overwhelmed, fearful, anxious. Because you project the world out there and you imagine yourself so weak, vulnerable. So you become fearful. But just observe how this is happening. So we're looking at how we project the world out there, and how it is that in projecting the world out there, we also create this separate entity here that we identify as this body and this storyline, this ego structure. And we become fearful. So we're just looking to see what's actually true. So sound, sight, sensation. Let's look at sensation. So you have an experience of what you would call sensation, that you have a story about. That sensation indicates something of an external world. So I often suggest that we can become aware of the contact of the body with the surface that it is resting on. It's a pointer, but don't take it too literally. So just let's explore that. Let's explore the actual direct experience of that. So the body, this is a story. You have a story, I have a story. We can talk about the story of the body resting on a surface. But notice that in reality, the only evidence of that, well, no, I'm sorry. In reality, there is no evidence whatsoever of that. But what we hold up as evidence of that is the sensation coupled with memory, images. Say, well, I remember that I sat down, or I remember that I lay down. So there's memory. We might bring some images from that. I remember the image of the chair that I was sitting on. I remember the image of the room. So we bring those things together into this constellation, this association, and then we take that to be true. So we say, I am sitting, I am lying down. What's the actual proof? So notice if you have eyes closed, again, it's not necessary to have eyes closed. It just makes it easier. If you have eyes closed, then you can just quickly eliminate a lot of the argumentativeness that arises from the visual field because there's so much association happening there. So if the eyes are closed, it's much easier to just recognize, well, I'm not seeing that presently externally. That's obvious. If there are any images, those are internal images. So what's actually what's actually the evidence that I'm holding up? Well, the sensation. Okay, so just notice the sensation. And then notice, how do you know what that sensation means? And then perhaps you can start to notice how you actually know that that sensation is even happening. That's if your brain wasn't already freaking out, your brain really should be freaking out by now. How do you know that that sensation, how do you even know that it exists? How do you know that? Now, the normal way of answering that question is, well, I feel it. Oh. Now, are you going to just believe that? Do you see the circular logic of that? Well, I know that it exists because I feel it. Let's be willing to surrender a little bit more. Again, come back to that image, and you don't have to believe it, but just open to this possibility. If it's true, it's true. You don't, it's just helpful just to maybe see that this possibility even exists, to open to it. But you don't need to believe it. You don't need to strain in any way. Just notice if you argue against it and be willing to surrender the argumentativeness. The image is this: you and I are completely supported. You and I are completely supported from within and without. We are completely supported from within and without by the totality, the complete power of all that is. We cannot fail. We are divinely protected. Now, see if you can allow yourself to surrender even more, just a little bit. Don't try to think, don't try and surrender some enormous amount. Don't have a low standard. I like low standards. It's more realistic. Just a little bit, just the tiniest little bit. Can you surrender just a little bit more? In this moment, can you recognize that really, truly, there's nothing that you need to be doing, nothing you need to figure out, nothing you need to defend. There's no problem, just now. Can you see that a little bit more clearly? And can you then just surrender because you recognize that clarity, that truth, that there's nothing I need to do in this moment. So how do you even know that this sensation exists? And can you see that, in fact, this sensation does not exist independently, and that it is only a habit, and that you work hard to maintain the false idea that this sensation is real, that the sensation exists independently, and that you do that through squeezing, grasping, clinging, armoring. So now I want you to really open to, if you can, just open to this image of being held by Divine Mother. Qualities of which are unconditional love, acceptance, and support, unfaltering, and just see that you can surrender a little bit more. Now, to whatever degree you are or have been able to glimpse the truth of this surrender, the truth of this boundless peace that is here now, that is not at a distance, that is right here, just so seemingly delicate, because we have these habits of falling off the wave. Even the smallest glimpse, even if the doubts come back in and say, I'm not sure, and I've got all these problems and whatever else, just that glimpse, any glimpse, whether it's half a second or it's been 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. Any glimpse, any recognition is true. So let's now begin. Let's begin to allow for this glimpse of truth, this glimpse of unconditional support and love to blossom in our lives, so that these false distinctions are washed away and we are living emissaries of that pure light. So we begin from this very open, unconditional awareness, a very profound rest, Even if there's seeming agitation, by the way, I want to just bring your attention to this profound rest, stillness, openness that is here. It's real. You don't have to believe it. Just don't argue for just half a second and tell the truth. That this is the truth. It's the truth at the core of your being. It's the truth always. Anytime you're willing to give up the drama for just half a second, this is here. It's reliable. Talk about support. This is real support always. You see what I mean? Unconditional. No matter how hardened, cynical you might be, this is always here. That's truly unconditional love. So we begin here and recognize that this is always true. It's always here. Now, start to peer into the so-called external world. I don't mean open the eyes. I just mean very lightly and gently with your awareness, just start to explore what you normally call the external world from this stillness. And see that it's possible to allow this stillness, this clarity to dissolve all of the false distinctions. So that the dog barking out there becomes very clear. The dog barking out there, the child crying out there, whatever it is that we think is happening out there, we can get really clear on what it actually is. Where is that dog barking? And what is the actual nature of the dog barking? Not as an idea, but in the actual direct experience. What is it that I can perceive? Is there actually a dog barking? How do I even know that there is this phenomenon of sound? How do I know that that's real? How do I know that that's happening? Look really closely. You'll start to see that what it is it's a squeezing. It's a defense. And it's a defense of what? It's a defense of me. It's a defense of my idea. It's a defense of my history, my memory. Look again at this nature that is closer than all of the conditioning. This nature of true support, unconditional love. Notice that it receives everything without judgment, without fear, without separation. So we can allow the outside world and the inside world to merge. And this is very powerful because we start to then recognize that we are empowered with authentic power, not the false power of self-defense. the authentic power of receiving, the authentic power of presence. So the dog barks, the conditioning says the dog is barking out there in the external world, and I'm here in my inner world, and I'm a prisoner, and I'm so angry. We can start to recognize what's actually true in the direct experience, what's really happening. There's no dog out there. There's no barking out there. There's no me in here. There's this apparent seeming phenomenon occurring now in open awareness. All of the reactions, all of the habits are to defend someone who is defined by pain, who is defined by hate, who is defined by fear, who is defined by all of the things that I don't want. And I have been working hard day in and day out to defend what it is that I don't want. But this open awareness here at the heart receives the inner and the outer, dissolves the false distinction, and reveals the clarity of perfection. So now we can begin to really see how it's possible to live from this support always, as we welcome more and more of the so-called external world into our awareness. We can become aware of the sounds around us, become aware of the sensations that we take to indicate the body, become aware of space and time and the story of my life. All these things we can, right now, we can welcome them into this open awareness so that we make this smooth transition, so that we're not flinging ourselves into our so-called external world too suddenly, to start with too much of a startle, and then we forget ourselves, we forget the support, we forget the clarity, we forget that we have a choice, that we don't have to contract, we don't have to indulge fear, we don't have to indulge anger, we don't have to indulge argumentativeness. So let's make this a smooth transition. See that we can ride that wave all the way to the shore. Refreshed, renewed, because we've surrendered everything. We've surrendered everything. We took this ride on the wave and we surrendered everything, because that's what's required. Just surrender everything, 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 held like a baby in its mother's arms, and allow ourselves to be carried gently all the way to the shore so that it's a smooth transition. If your eyes have been closed, then take a moment to open them slowly. Don't rush into it. A lot of stimulus can happen when the eyes are open. So just be gentle with it and be present to that transition so that you don't startle yourself. And you can remain aware of this surrender even as you come ashore. And it seems as though when you come ashore, you must stand on your own 2 feet, or you must exert some kind of self-effort. But let this transition be so smooth that you can be aware that you are supported and carried even through the experiences that you out of habit have believed were self-effort, so that you can let all of it be more restful. Let all of your relationships be more restful. Let your thinking be more restful. Let your finances be more restful. Let your relationship with your body be more restful. So really take your time. Don't really, sincerely, don't rush. And as you're continuing to take your time, I'm going to mention to you that momentarily, for those who are here live, we'll stay on for the Q&A. I'm going to end the recording of the formal inquiry. So for those who are participating by watching the recording, thank you for joining. Bye for now.